Rio de Janeiro, state of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the city that keeps its breath between the sea and the Moros. My name is Mariana. I am 31 years old, and I live in a narrow, sun-warmed apartment on a slope in Santa Teresa, where the street curves like a question, and the tram's bell still remembers the old names of people who have long since left. I work as a social worker in a municipal health clinic by day and sing with a samba school on the nights when the drums call me. I am also finishing a part-time degree in anthropology, which gives me an excuse to read in cafes and to ask too many questions at family meals. I live with my mother, Lucia, who folds the world into neat piles of laundry and stories, and with my grandmother, Dona Rosa, who keeps a small altar of saints and a jar of black beans on the stove as if both were prayers. My brother, Joe, comes and goes like a tide. Sometimes he sleeps on the couch after a night shift at the hospital. Sometimes he disappears for weeks to the Moro, where his friends are building a new life out of concrete and music. My routine is a braided thing. Mornings begin with the smell of coffee that Lucia makes strong enough to be a warning. She pours it into a chipped cup and slides it across the table with a look that says, "Go, but come back." I walk down the steep street with my satchel, the city opening like a map of small betrayals and small mercies, vendors with bananas sweating in the sun, a man selling newspapers with the same headline for 3 days, the sound of a radio leaking funk from a window. The tram's iron bones creak. The view from the top of the hill is a postcard that refuses to be tidy. The bay glitters. Sugarloaf stands like a sentinel, and the Moros rise behind neighborhoods like a chorus of voices. At the clinic, I move between rooms like a translator of bodies. I listen to mothers who speak in half sentences about fever and school, to old men who bring their ailments wrapped in jokes. I carry a pen and a patience that sometimes feels like a borrowed thing. The clinic is a place where the city's contradictions meet. A woman with a degree in law waits in the same queue as a man who sells cocadas on the beach. A child with a cough and a child with a bruise sit side by side. I try to stitch those lives together with appointments and referrals, with the small bureaucratic kindnesses that keep people from falling through the cracks. At night, when the clinic's fluorescent lights dim and the streets begin to hum with other kinds of labor, I go to rehearsal. The samba school is in a warehouse near the docks, a place where the air tastes of salt and sweat and paint. We rehearse for carnival as if we are rehearsing for survival. The drums, surdo, quexa, tamborim, arrive like a weather system, and when they begin, the city outside seems to fold into the rhythm. I sing lead sometimes, my voice trying to hold the melody while the percussion rearranges the world. The samba school is a family of its own. Older women who have sewn costumes for decades, teenagers who learn to carry a melody like a secret, men who argue about the right way to tune a surdo, and then make up with a shared beer. There is a ritual to it. The way we warm up our voices, the way we pass around a thermos of coffee, the way we stop to eat a slice of bolo de fub between takes. On Sundays, after rehearsal, someone always brings a pot of feijoada, and the whole place smells like black beans and orange peels, and the slow, patient heat of a meal that remembers the past. The Moros are never far from my life. I grew up with the Moro in my periphery. Rocinha's terraces, Vidigal's painted houses, the narrow alleys where children play soccer with a ball that has seen better days. My brother's friends live in a favela that climbs like a hand up the hillside. Their lives are a tangle of ingenuity and risk. I go there sometimes to visit, to bring medicine from the clinic, or to sing at a community event. The favela is not a single thing. It is a collection of households, of small businesses, of barbershops and bakeries, and people who have learned to make space where the city has not given them any. There are mornings when the sun hits the corrugated roofs, and the whole place looks like a mosaic of tin and hope. There are nights when the sound of distant gunfire makes the dogs howl, and the air tastes of fear. We do not pretend those nights do not exist. We name them, we hold them, and we keep living. Food is a language in my family. Lucia's hands know the grammar of a good feijoada, the slow simmer of beans, the careful browning of the meats, the way the orange slices cut through the richness like punctuation. On Sundays, the apartment fills with cousins and neighbors. Plates are passed, stories are told, and the radio plays old sambas that make the elders close their eyes and remember lovers who are now ghosts. Dona Rosa insists on adding a little cachaça to the pot. For the soul, she says, and the children are given suco de maracuja to keep them from stealing the caipirinhas. We eat with our hands sometimes, or with spoons that have been in the family for generations. The feijoada is more than food. It is a ledger of belonging. When someone is sick, we bring them a bowl. When someone is celebrating, we bring them a bowl. When someone dies, we remember them over the same black beans. There are small gestures that mark us as cariocas. We greet each other with a quick embrace, pressing cheeks together and kissing once on each side of the face, the motion practiced and warm. We say beleza as a way to close a conversation, a word that can mean everything from okay to I see you. We have a way of walking that is both relaxed and alert, as if the city is a lover we trust but also watch. We complain about the traffic with a kind of affection. We call the sea the mother and the moros the brothers. We know the best time to buy fish at the market, the exact corner where the best pastéis are sold, the vendor who will give you an extra slice of lime if you smile. These are not tourist facts. They are the small economies of care that keep us afloat. Humor is a currency here. We laugh at ourselves before anyone else can. In the clinic, when a patient tells a story that is half tragedy and half comedy, we laugh together because laughter is a way to share the weight. At the samba school, jokes fly like confetti. Someone will make a pun about a costume, and the whole room will dissolve into giggles. Even in the Moro, where life can be precarious, there is a sharp, resilient wit. My brother Joel can make a joke in the middle of a tense conversation, and the tension will break like a wave. Humor is not denial. It is a way of naming pain without letting it become the only thing that defines us. The city has rituals that are public and private. There is the ritual of the beach. Early in the morning, the runners and the old men who play foot volley, the vendors who push carts of coconut water and grilled cheese, the way the sand holds the heat of the day like a promise. There is the ritual of the tram in Santa Teresa, the way tourists take photographs and the locals roll their eyes and then smile because the tram is ours too. There is the ritual of carnival, which is both a spectacle and a labor. Months of sewing, of rehearsals, of fundraising, of arguments about who will carry which flag. Carnival is where the city tells its story in sequins and drums, where the Moros and the mansions and the beaches all find themselves in the same parade for a few fevered hours. I remember one carnival night that still sits in my chest like a bright coin. We had been rehearsing for weeks, and the samba school's wing of percussionists had been practicing a new groove that made the floor vibrate like a heartbeat. The costumes were half finished, the paint still wet on the masks. I had been up since dawn at the clinic, and my feet ached, but when the drums started, something in me unknotted. We walked from the warehouse toward the avenue, the city opening like a throat. The Moro looked down at us, a dark silhouette studded with lights, and the sea was a black mirror. People lined the streets, faces lit by street lamps and by the glow of their phones. We moved as if we were carrying the city on our shoulders, and for a few hours we were. I sang until my voice was raw, and when the last note fell away, a woman I did not know took my hand and said, "Obrigada," and I felt the word like a benediction. There are tensions that live in the seams of the city. The tourist postcards do not show the bureaucracy that keeps a favela from getting proper sanitation, the politics that decide which neighborhoods get new schools and which get new surveillance cameras. There are nights when the police and the residents do not speak the same language, when fear becomes a currency that some people profit from. I see those tensions in my work, in the way a mother hesitates to report a domestic violence incident because she fears the consequences, in the way a young man refuses to go to the clinic because he distrusts the system. My job is often to be a bridge, to translate fear into action, to find the small legal aid or the community program that can make a difference. It is exhausting, and it is necessary. Family is a complicated geography. Lucia is a woman who learned to be both tender and tough. She can scold me with the same voice she uses to sing lullabies. She keeps a calendar on the wall with appointments and birthdays, and the names of saints. Dona Rosa, who is 83, remembers the city before the highways, before the condos, when the sea came closer and the hills were wilder. She tells stories about lovers and about the time she danced with a man who played the cavaquinho, and when she speaks, the room becomes a theater. Joab is restless and generous. He will give you his last cigarette and then ask for money for the bus. We argue about politics at the table and then pass the salt like a treaty. Our arguments are loud and affectionate. They are how we test the strength of our bonds. There are small, private rituals that keep me steady. I have a corner of the apartment where I keep a stack of notebooks, a guitar with a nick in its side, and a jar of coffee beans that I'd grind by hand on Sundays. I write in the mornings when the light is soft, and the city is still deciding what it will be that day. I go to the beach sometimes to watch the light change on the water. The sea has a way of making my problems look like pebbles. I visit the Moro with a bag of medicines and a thermos of coffee, and the children there teach me new songs and new words. Music is the thread that runs through everything. The samba at the school, the old boleros that Dona Rosa hums, the funk that leaks from a neighbor's window at midnight. Music is how we remember and how we imagine. There are moments when the city's beauty feels like a kind of cruelty, when the view from the top of the hill is breathtaking, and you know that below someone is sleeping without a roof. There are moments when the city's cruelty feels like a kind of beauty, when a neighbor shares a plate of rice and beans with you, and you realize that generosity is the city's most abundant resource. I have learned to hold both truths at once. Once on a rainy afternoon, I walked down to the market to buy limes. The rain made the cobblestones shine like black glass. A boy of about 10 was selling newspapers under a plastic tarp. His hair was plastered to his forehead, and he smiled at me with a kind of fierce politeness. I bought a paper and a lime, and he insisted on giving me the lime for free. "For your voice?" he said, as if he knew I sang. I laughed and told him I would sing for him next time. He nodded solemnly, as if a promise had been made. That is the city in miniature, small exchanges that feel like vows. There are days when I am tired of being the one who listens, who holds, who translates. There are days when I want to be selfish with my time, to sleep until the sun has moved, and to eat a whole cake without sharing. But then the drums call, or a neighbor knocks on the door with a plate of leftover feijoada, or a child in the Moro learns a new chorus and sings it like a discovery, and I remember why I stay. The city asks a lot of you, but it also gives back in ways that are not always measurable. A friend's hand on your shoulder, the way the light falls on the bay at dusk, the sound of a tambourine that makes your bones remember how to dance. I do not pretend to have answers for the city's problems. I only know how to keep showing up. At the clinic, at the samba school, at the table where my family argues and forgives. I know how to listen for the small openings where change can begin. A new community garden, a teacher who stays after class, a lawyer who volunteers on a Saturday. I know how to make feijoada that will feed a dozen people and how to sew a costume seam that will hold through the parade. I know how to sing until my voice is raw and then laugh about it with my friends. Sometimes, late at night, I climb the narrow stairs to the roof of our building and sit with a cup of coffee while the city breathes around me. The lights of the Moros look like constellations that have fallen to earth. The sea is a dark, patient thing. I think about the people I have met, the mothers at the clinic, the old men who tell jokes, the teenagers who drum with a seriousness that makes them look older than they are. I think about my grandmother's hands, the way she folds a napkin like a prayer, and about Joe's laugh, which can fill a room. I think about the Samba School's drums and the way they make the ground feel like a living thing. The city is a conversation that never ends, a song with many verses. I am part of that song, a voice that sometimes leads and sometimes follows. I do not know what the future will bring. More reforms, more constructions, more arguments. But I know that the city will keep making itself, day by day, in the small gestures and the big parades, in the feijoadas and the funerals, in the laughter and the fear. I will keep listening, keep singing, keep bringing medicine and coffee and stories. And when the drums begin again, as they always do, I will stand in the circle and let the rhythm take me, because in this city of sea and morrow and endless light, to keep moving is to keep believing that we can make something beautiful out of what we have. The last thing I hear before I go back downstairs is the distant, steady beat of a surdo, and it sounds like a promise.